Please forgive me for sitting, I normally wouldn't, but I won't make it through an hour and a half stood up, so I'm going to try and do it from sitting. But thank you all so much for coming, and also a big thank you to Victoria Hall, because it is such a great space, and they've been really, really helpful. So this evening, I'm not an expert at local government. In fact, I try my best not to be, because that's not my job. So I'm hoping that I will explain where I think we are in the process in the most normal person terms, because it's not something I particularly understand either. But essentially my goal is to map out the government's thinking, what we think the implications will be for us, what different stakeholders currently are proposing, and most importantly, I want to hear your views. I'm going to try and keep my bit, it keeps getting longer, but to about 15-20 minutes, and then essentially, I just want to hear your responses. So whatever you feel about it, what you think about it. As I said, I won't have all the expert or all the answers, but I'm hoping you leave here going, okay, I get it. I see what's been proposed, I understand what I think it means. And most of all for me, I'm hoping that I will leave with an idea of your red lines, what you're most worried about, what this means for you, what you want to see happen. I will say things are changing by the day. So we're sat waiting for a letter from government this week, which will tell us whether or not the elections in Leicestershire will be cancelled. Now that may be Leicestershire, but essentially if the elections are cancelled, that means that we need to look at a particular pathway, which if elections are cancelled, means our process will be moving a lot faster than others around the country. So when I say this is changing on a daily basis, it really isn't. So in terms of what I'm going to try and cover, as I said, what and why, the timeline, the benefits, concerns, who are the decision makers, what's it mean for us, do we have a choice, what next, and your thoughts. So in terms of what the government is proposing, so this is the biggest reforms to local council in the last 50 years. It's major reforms. We all know that local council is where actually people have the most contact with government, and therefore it's the most important touchstone. What they plan to do is to move away from what we call two-tier governments. So in Leicestershire, that's scrapping Hertford District Council. In Lincolnshire, that's scrapping South Stephen District Council, Melton Borough Council. But they also want to scrap small unitaries, and that means people like us. And as they do the reorganisation, they don't want to end up with what they call orphan councils. So essentially councils surrounded by mayoralties, and then essentially isolated councils like us. In their place, they want to create these brand new enormous unitaries, which have to have, it gets more complicated, with a minimum of 500,000 people living in them. That was their original goal. In the course of the last 4 weeks, they've negotiated with Treasury, and the Treasury has said to MHCLG that they're happy for the minimum floor to be 380,000. So it's a big reduction, but that's still a lot more than 41,000 people that we currently have. So as I say, Rutland is 41, South Stephen currently serves 145,000 residents, and Melton serves 52,000. And the government has said that they will facilitate this programme of two-tier reorganisation for those unitary councils where there is evidence of failure, or where their size or boundaries may be hindering their ability to deliver sustainable and high-quality services for their residents. I'll come on to whether either of those apply to us later. But the be-all and end-all is not local government reorganisation. The be-all and end-all is what they call devolution, which is the next level up. They're not actually particularly interested in the local government reorganisation, that's why it wasn't in their manifesto. But what was is the creation of mayoralties across the country. So essentially the goal is they want to create big strategic authorities where you have one mayor. So probably in the end you're looking at about 10 mayors to cover the whole of England. So we really are looking at mass groups. And these combined authorities, as they often call them, will have enormous powers, particularly when it comes to planning. So essentially we scrap small unitaries, we scrap district councils, and we move that tier of government to essentially sitting above county councils. So you're not necessarily making lots of savings, you're just changing where it sits. So why is the government saying they want to do it? They're saying that the benefits are the decisions to be made closer to home. Now what they mean by that is not what we consider closer to home, because in rather than Whitehall making decisions, taking more powers away from government and parliament, which a lot of people will be in fun of. However, as I say, those decisions could potentially for us be made somewhere like Glenfield, or worst case scenario, be made somewhere like Nottinghamshire for us. We just don't know. So it's not local in terms of open, but these councils will still have all the same responsibilities our current council does. So schooling, transport, adult social care, taxation, children's services, planning, leisure centres, you name it. Now it is true that if you speak to councils across the country, they all want more devolution, But what they mean by devolution is more powers for their council. They don't necessarily mean threatening to come into mayoralties. So, where we are is that areas who want devolution have to put forward final proposals by March. However, initial proposals have to go in by January the 10th, so they've already got in. So government only wrote to councils in December. So it was an incredibly short timeline for them to put more proposals. But they did write to all councils. So Hertfordshire Council, Merton Borough Council, they never received a letter asking for their opinion. Leicestershire County Council was asked, as the main unit in the area, and RCC was asked to give an opinion as the kind of neighbouring potential orphan, but not with equal authority to Leicestershire County Council in response. So as I said, in terms of the mayoralty, those authorities would be everything from transport to skills to housing, economic development, environment, climate change, health, well-being. And it is true that it would be easier for government to allocate money to regions, because they'd say, here, Mayor, this is your money for the whole of these Midlands. But as we say, decision-making is very sense of government more then. So in long term, many competences that will currently be immediate move potentially to Leicestershire, in the end will move to this kind of big metro mayor model. And to be fair, we have seen some successes with it. You know, I'm not sat here saying they haven't worked. Andy Burnham has done a really good job in his area. Andy Street has done a really good job in his area. There are others I won't name, but even next door to us we've got some, and you couldn't tell me the name of the mayor sitting here, actually I can't remember his name either. You know, there are mayors around the country where they haven't made an impact, they haven't been able to make a difference. So it is a really mixed bag. So essentially we've got two processes taking place at the same time. Now devolution, as I said, is the government's priority, and Leicestershire and Lincolnshire have both applied to be part of the devolution process, and by signing the letter that went to government, Rutland has said they're happy to be part of the devolution process discussions, but RCC did put in a red line, which was that local reorganisation has to be done properly first, and they won't agree to any cost. So as well as decision making, the other kind of praise the government would give to the new process would be civil structures. It massively enables housing, so you've got one there making planning for vast areas, and actually the Minister responsible for reorganisation said last week, this agenda is all about tackling housing. It's about exactly that. And that's why areas like Harbour, of course, are so worried about being moved into Leicester City. There should be cost savings, arguably, when this happens, because you have fewer CEOs, fewer senior management teams, less duplication, and ministers frequently quote this report from PwC that you can save billions. But I don't really think the maths adds up if you're essentially saying, take away this level, but then create a new level up here, because you're ultimately still going to end up with multiple levels. And I asked the Library of Parliament to give me an assessment of this, and they said that the evidence does not show that there are savings always. Sometimes there are, but actually internationally it shows that when councils merge, there isn't always money saved, actually better ways for councils to share procurement in different areas. So in terms of where we are, I touched on it very briefly. So we've had the first letter go in by January 10th, where RCC and LCC had to say what their preference was. I'll come back to that in a moment. Then you get to interim proposals by March, which is incredibly soon. Then detailed proposals in May, or if you're lucky, our goal will be to try and push it back to at least autumn. And then essentially they would have devolution deals in place by 2027, and we will be wrapped up by 2028 in our brand new models. So 185 councils moving into new unitary structures by 2028. However, I think that timeline might be slightly optimistic. So who makes the decision? The final decision is made by the Secretary of State, that's Angela Rayner in this situation. No restructure, any change to how we receive the benefit from local government requires the councils to give their consent. So the process they have created not only has not started public consultation, and there is no mechanism for you as the public to support or oppose this until the very end, which I'll touch on, but they've essentially said that they will legislate the councils who refuse to get on board, or where one council is standing in the way of the restructure. In the past, there's always been public consultations, there's some digital reviews, and all sorts of referendums, but as you saw from the timeline, there isn't one. Now, I've put a written question to government saying, are you going to put funding in? So you can pay for the referendums in areas where clearly there's massive public opposition to this, and they haven't responded yet. Now, technically, we've been told, but again, the details aren't there because this is all happening so fast, that there will be a public consultation at the very end of all of this, but it will be on the mayoralties. It won't be on the local government reorganisation side of things. So you all might get consulted, would you like to join a massive East Midlands mayoralty, would you like to just join a Leicestershire and Rutland mayoralty, but you won't get asked about whether or not you want to leave Rutland and rejoin Leicestershire. So what does it mean for Rutland? So we all know they want to scrap small unitaries. We all know that they would consider us an orphan unitary, because everyone else around us has gone into unitaries and then ultimately strategic authorities. And we know that we're expected to join a council with a minimum of 380,000 people in it. And then on top of that, they'll put a unitary and confined model. So what does that journey look like for us? We have lots and lots of neighbours, we all know that. But Lincolnshire's already wrapped up the mayoralty deal. Northamptonshire isn't even really a question. Then you've got Cambridgeshire, which is going with Peterborough, and then of course you've got Leicestershire. So in terms of Leicestershire, that's obviously where we're increasingly subsumed. We thought we would have more choice. In my discussion with Gail Waller, we thought we'd have more choice about what we could put forward as proposals, but they changed the discussion halfway through and said that now, when you form a unitary, they expect you to come on board and be co-located with your current police services, your fire services and health services. So if they, for example, we would suddenly say, well, actually, we want to join Lincolnshire, we would be breaking one of the restrictions they're trying to put in place in terms of how we would do that. One thing I do want to just quash immediately, because a lot of people worry about this, there is no proposal under which we join Leicester City. That is not on the table and it is not for discussion. Whether in the end as part of a mayoralty, we're part of a Leicestershire and Rutland mayoralty, that is very possible, but we will not be run from the centre of Leicester for our local council. So, in terms of what those options are available to us, if we look at Leicestershire and Leicester as a model, because that's what we've got to assume at this point, the current proposal that's gone into government is that we want, and forgive the language, a giant donut. So one unitary council for Leicester on its own, because there are about 380,000 people, and then one unitary council for the whole of Leicestershire and Rutland together. And we will be in together. We've got no idea where the headquarters will be, it could be Glenfield. But it's not that simple, because Leicester City has to prove that it has the financial ability to grow over the next few years. It can't be just sufficient as it is currently. So Leicester City will expand its borders, and this is one of the things the County Council, Leicestershire County Council, said they're willing to see happen. As you can imagine, my residents in Harborough are up in arms. They are not willing to be subsumed into Leicester City for many, many reasons. However, that shouldn't stand to us. So LCC has put forward that proposal. It has been opposed by all 7 district councils in Leicestershire, as well as Rutland County Council, who have written together to the Minister and said, we don't want one giant unitary authority for Leicestershire, it's not going to work for us. So then the question is, if we were to move to having to move into Leicestershire, and it was to be 2 unitaries, should it be Rutland with West and East Leicestershire, or should it be Rutland with split into North and South, or East and West? And there are lots of different arguments at that moment, and the district councils have commissioned research with Rutland County Council to try and work out what would make most sense. I think the only red line currently for district councils is that Melton wants to be with Rutland, however it ends up if this happens. I'll go into more of these later, but the key thing, as I've touched on the slides, is that currently we have 27 councillors here, representing us as Rutland. If we move into one giant donut, as I'm going to keep referring to it, we will have 3 people representing the whole of Rutland on that council. If we move into 2 unitaries, it's likely we have 6. However, there are arguments we could make to try and increase that, which I'll come on to later. So status quo, obviously, is the other option available to us, and then putting forward an alternative, which you may see in the Rutland Times, Gail and I have both been working quite hard to see if there's an alternative we can put forward. The problem with an alternative, and knocking on doors during the election, I cannot tell you how many people in Stamford and Stamford Village have said to me, we wish we were Rutland. And I've never spoken about it publicly before because I always thought, if that's what people want in that part of my constituency, I would wait, I'll see if it's groundswell, and then we'll do something about it. Obviously, this has forced the conversation. But unfortunately, no matter how you cut it, and this doesn't mean you shouldn't put it forward as a proposal, the numbers don't get us to 380,000. So if we were to take the whole of SKDC, which is 145,000 people, but that also takes us all the way up to Grantham and Bourne, and then all the way down to Market Deeping, let alone the bits I represent, if we add them all together, we're still plus with Nelson as well, we would still be 100,000 short of the target we have to hit. Now, as I said, that doesn't mean we shouldn't put forward an alternative, because we should have a voice in this, and we can say what we think is best for us. But in terms of the sheer numbers, with the Vale of Beaver, Melton, SKDs and everything, we end up short. And the additional complexities of this is what does it mean for Melton being obviously Leicestershire at the moment, what does it mean for SKDC, which is kind of part of Lincolnshire, and the same way that we're proud of ourselves and our identity and our pride of place, there's similar feelings. So, if they go ahead with this, will we still be Rutland? I should say at this point the Lord Lieutenant said to give an apology so she couldn't come. So I will pass that on. So according to government, I spent a lot of time looking into things that I never thought I could understand. Ceremonial counties only exist as counties for purposes of having a Lord Lieutenant. That is the way it's defined in law. We've obviously had a Lord Lieutenant since 1559, and pretty much all the way through, apart from we lost it in 1974. And from a government perspective, ceremonial counties are defined as something called the Attendees Act of 1997. Now, as we all know, in 1974 we lost our Lord Lieutenancy, and with that we lost our ceremonial county status. There are currently no examples in the whole country of multiple ceremonial counties existing under one local government. It just doesn't exist. So I wrote to government, and I did a written question, which essentially means the minister has to respond formally, legally sound, and essentially it's as if they were out the dispatch box, which happens with writing. And I said, what are you doing to look at ceremonial counties? What are you going to do to make sure Rutland's abuses and offenders? And as you can see, their answer says, it won't directly impact the order of a ceremonial county, and then you just skip to the bottom in red, but if it does, we'll look at the implications. So my assumption of this is that the government hasn't given any thought yet to what this means for ceremonial counties, but it also tells me they can't promise they'll protect our ceremonial county, which makes sense because of what we all know happened back in 1974. So from that, I went, okay, the government's not going to promise me they can protect us, so let's look at the legislative status to see if there's something I can get from that. So as I said, the Lord Lieutenancies Act of 1997 was created before Rutland was a unitary again. So when you open that act up, Rutland isn't listed as one of the places that has a Lord Lieutenancy, so that's the first problem for me. I have spoken to some experts today who've told me that Section 3B of the Act, which says any other areas of England which wish to have counties, ceremonial counties, as per the Local Government Act 1972. Now, fine, you can say that called the 1972 Act, anyone that was a county in 1972 can have it, but it was the 1972 Act that scrapped Rutland as a county council and made us a district. So I'm essentially sat between different legal opinions at the moment, but I need to get to the bottom of it. But the assessment still leaves me with the point that we, as a county, do not have any certainty that we will be able to protect being a ceremonial county. So going back to 1990, when was this quote? It must be 1974. The then Labour government minister gave this answer when they were asked in the chamber about could we just have our ceremonial status please, even if we've got to join Leicestershire. And as you can say, they said it is not possible because you cannot be a ceremonial county if you do not have your own county council or some sort of council. So, therefore, if Rutland were abolished as a local government area, we would lose our Lord Lieutenancy and therefore we would lose our ceremonial status as Rutland. As you can see why this worries me, and the lack of reassurances is yet worries me as well. But as I've said, there are some who are more optimistic than me, so we'll see. So in terms of how we protect our ceremonial status in Rutland, that for me is an absolute red line. It's just something I will fight for, unless you all tell me that I'm mad and you want me to put down my battle axe, in which case I will. But I don't think we should be stripped of our identity. So in terms of the options that we have, ultimately this is all in the hands of the government. They can decide to protect our ceremonial status if they wish to do so, if we are forced to join Leicestershire County Council, and that is something we can campaign for. Option 2, the government is going to have to pass legislation potentially to force us to merge if we refuse to merge, or for all sorts of other reasons, to do with elections, for example, postponing things like that. If that happened, I could lay an amendment as your MP that says, I want ceremonial status to be protected. Now, I've gone around the country over the last few weeks speaking to MPs of all sorts of political colours. I can't find anyone else, unfortunately, who's looking at this problem, because that was my goal. I can find lots of people who are saying, we're going to lose our ceremonial status if we can work together. If I lay an amendment, I know Conservative MPs will vote for it, I would hope the Dem MPs will vote for it as well. I don't know what would happen otherwise, and essentially I'd have to go around begging friends across other political parties like the SNP to vote, even though they don't know English matters, but it is an option. But then there's option 3, which is essentially in the Lieutenancies Act, there's a sentence that says, Her Majesty may appoint lieutenants for any county or area. Now, area is a bit I'm interested in because we wouldn't be a county anymore. So could we ask the King to appoint a lieutenant just for Rutland? Now, the issue with that is it's not a Lord Lieutenant, so I don't know if a lieutenant on its own is enough to confer ceremonial county status, or if we just have someone who's very lovely who gets to go and do ceremonial things that we lose our county status. Dr. Sarah Vanessa has very kindly written to the palace today. We had an initial response, which wasn't very helpful, but I'm hopeful we can work through it together. So these are the options that I think we currently have that potentially allow us to protect our Lord Lieutenant, which is the way for us to protect our county status. You can see how much fun I've had with all of this. And route 4, of course, is something I haven't considered. I'm hopeful one of you might come up with and tell me this evening that I've obviously missed that was lacking in the effects. So just a reminder in terms of what's looking like our current options. One is join Leicestershire with a giant donut. Second is join Leicestershire, what I'm calling Leicestershire Local, which is 2 different unitaries in Leicestershire. The status quo or alternative proposal, and we'll have to see where we get to. So in terms of concerns, we talked about the loss of the ceremonial county, which I think is a pretty enormous one, this essentially issue of government will. The second one is the process and the speed. So as I've touched on, district councils have been ignored, they haven't been given a single chance to have their say. And Rutland County Council has only really been given a say as an add-on to Leicestershire County Council. So this doesn't feel like a choice, it feels like it's being imposed. In terms of the limited engagement, that is why the current proposals at the government is one giant donut, as if that somehow is representative of all our views, when none of us have been given a chance to have it. The speed at which government is moving is not allowing that space of public discussion. It worries me how many people email me in Rutland saying we have no idea about this at all until you send an email saying we're holding a public meeting. That shouldn't be the way that things are done when they're going to affect all of you more than anyone else, when our bins are collected, how they're collected, what happens and where our lives are working. And in terms of the future, as I said, there's very limited space for that meaningful engagement. So I have made a request to Leicestershire County Council, but I think they should be holding public meetings. They should be going out and putting forward. If they want to propose that we move to one unitary model, they should be making that case to everyone. They should be making the case to Rutland as to why we should join Leicestershire and why it be different this time. As I touched on the bigger, better fallacy, there is no proof that it's better. And I've had a great quote from an academic who said, the search for optimum size of council has proven to be as successful as the search for the philosopher's stone. And as a Harry Potter fan, I particularly enjoyed that quote, so I thought I'd put it in. But essentially, there are no consistent or conclusive results. I have read so many academic studies over the last few weeks, I cannot tell you. And that's one benefit of being housebound, is you have a lot of time to read. But also the cost of restructuring, rebranding, repopulating, ripping the signs out on our roads to say welcome to Rutland, all of this stuff, it adds up. And so most academics have said that supposed advantages of the economies of scale and the bigger is cheaper argument actually are outnumbered by when councils work together across boundaries. So for example, Rutland does outsource some of its areas, not actually as many as everyone thinks they do, but they do outsource some, and actually those combined functions are cheaper than reorganisations. In terms of, also the point I've made is if it was that much cheaper when you come together, why does it cost government £1 for every pencil when we can go buy a pencil each for 20p in a shop? We all know these things don't always work as I think. In terms of representation of our voice, accountability matters. What is going to be the focus of the new council if it's a giant donut? Will they care about our way of life? That's one of the things that I put in my promises to you when I was to be re-elected, because it does matter. We have a very different life to many people across our country. Remote decision making is a massive problem. So when I was representing Melton still, the fight I had to get the Melton Mowbray Signature Road built, I cannot tell you how painful it was. And that's because Leicestershire County Council didn't have it as a priority and they didn't see it as a major priority, despite the fact that people of Melton had promised it for 50 years. And the fight I had to have, and that remoteness was nowhere near as big as what we're looking at potentially moving to. Stamford, the frustrations I hear constantly, they feel they're being milked for Grantham or for Lincoln, they're forgotten, they never get anything. It's true when you look at the figures, they don't get what they should be getting. But also again, if you look at the academics, as soon as you move away from a smaller council, electoral turnout goes lower for councils, because people go, oh, well, you know. Public trust goes down, levels of engagement goes down, contact between citizens and councillors go down, identification and affinity with the council goes down, and also the number of councillors, this doesn't benefit me to say it, but the number of councils, but it does actually, yeah, so the number of councillors elected from just the major parties, so Conservative, Lib Dem, and Labour, goes up. Anyway, it's fine. But the point is, we have a lot of independents in Rutland. There are a lot of independents across Leicestershire as well. All the statistics show that when you move to a bigger model, people just vote for colour because they don't know them, and the issues aren't local. As I said, I've touched on the councillors. The idea that we would go down to 3 councillors only is an extraordinary point. And that takes me to the question of how much was our voice listened to last time we were in Leicestershire. There's a reason why we left Leicestershire, and it was a good one. Last one is, I haven't got quite the right order, but anyway, equity and fair share. So I touched on the point about less representation. As I said last time around, we didn't get our fair share. We've had the same problem with something called local enterprise partnerships. So we're part of the Cambridge and Peterborough one. Then we left them and we joined the Leicestershire one, and we still didn't get our fair share. Then we joined the Lincolnshire one, most of you didn't know we'd be moving around, but essentially these are the organisations that make you boosting productivity and prosperity from an economic perspective in our areas. The Lincolnshire Let published this big glossy document about 3 weeks ago. They posted it to me. There wasn't one mention of Rutland in the entire document, despite the fact that we pay to be part of the Let and we contribute funding for projects. All the money goes up to the north. So I think, for me, I have a real question of whether we get equity or fair share. Costs, we've got no idea of the costs, but the councils haven't been given any money for this work. So Rutland County Councils will try and do all this work to work out what is best for us and what to do and how to navigate and what cards you want to hand when you walk into a poker game where the dealer knows exactly where you've gone, is it necessary on your side? And they're having to do all that in support. And then fair funding. None of this solves the problem of fair funding. The idea that an East Midlands mayoralty is going to get as much money as the West Midlands mayoralty is perverse. The idea that Leicestershire Rutland is suddenly going to get this money unlocked. There is no evidence, there's no formula they've given us, there's nothing they've given us to prove that will happen. So how do we mitigate some of these concerns? Because my goal is always to try and find solutions. So in terms of which model we back, we've obviously got a lot to say about what we do on that, but we don't have a lot to say, but we've caused a lot of trouble and tried to. We can put forward an alternative proposal. I think we can work hard to try and protect our Stoneham County. I personally, and I was really hard, I was writing this and I was trying to stay neutral, but I got more radicalised every second that I worked on the proposal. I think we need a referendum. If our proposal is really for Rutland to lose its independence, there should be a referendum of our communities. And if the government won't fund it, then I will ask RCC to find the funding for it, because I think it's important. I've worked out the cost of about £52,000, so it is a lot of money, but at the same time it's about our future. We could ask for smaller divisions, so we could say, fine, we've got to go into this too big Leicestershire, because I don't think we're going to go to one, then we demand that you have much smaller wards, and therefore we could end up with 9 councillors rather than just 6. Again, we just have to fight for it and try and make that argument. And of course, we could also put as a red line that the council must have Rutland in its name. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it will protect our ceremonial status, but I know, I cannot tell you how many arguments I get into with the NHS, police, Environment Agency, when they write to me as the MP for Rutland to give me an update, and for example the Environment Agency says, you need to update Northamptonshire and Lincolnshire, and it's got loads of Rutland stuff in it, and I reply going, you do represent Rutland as well, and they go, yeah, but we just don't put it in the name. Well, yeah, I have an issue with that. So in terms of the question of does it have to happen, do we have a choice? There was a lot of excitement after the 21st of January when the House of Commons, the Minister said, the government is not requiring any area to reorganise. All we've done is write out and invite proposals to be submitted. So lots of people across the country, including the local Chronicle and local councils, are ringing me going, oh, we misread the paper, wherever it is, the giant, white paper, and maybe it's not being forced to us. But I go back to what the white paper says. And the white paper says, as it says here, the government will do this as quickly as we can, including through legislation where it becomes necessary to ensure progress. A later quote says, we will legislate the ministerial directive, and that means that we can interfere where areas have not been able to make progress. That to me is very, very clear that they will legislate if we refuse to take part and do as we're asked. And they have said in other interviews that no one council will be able to derail reform, because they are very concerned about that. So if we say we can't agree to devolution to local government reorganisation settle, that does give us some negotiating power, but we're in a very difficult place. I had a long meeting with the leader of Hertfordshire District Council about this earlier. So some of you may recognise the phrase resistance is futile, and I think a lot of people feel that, but I'm not really one to accept that, as you may have learned so far. So in terms of what next, it could be this Thursday that we hear whether or not local elections are being cancelled, and we'll get told whether we're on pathway to or not, which is essentially the one that means that we then have to put forward final proposals by March, well, we're calling it interim proposals, but essentially, and then final ones sorted by the summer. There's also going to be a Rutland County Council full council meeting that you can go to and give your views and speak at. I've asked Leicestershire County Council to publish the letter they sent to government, saying that they wanted us to all sign up to, because I haven't had sight of it, and as an MP, I was not told before this proposal went in that the proposal wasn't one giant donut. And then obviously my job is to try and keep you informed, and I promise you this is my last slide. So, essentially what I'm looking for this evening is your thoughts thoughts on what's been proposed for us. If we were to be subsumed, do you want one giant donut? Am I wrong on that? Do we want two? How do you think it should be best arranged? What do you think the red line should be? What should we be pushing for? Obviously there are red lines around things like council numbers, but also around council tax. There's all sorts of different things. Or do you just want us to refuse, do the status quo, fight as hard as we can, refuse, and me to be locally work out some very clever ways to delay as much as I can? I'm sorry that took me slightly longer to explain what I wanted to, but hopefully it gives you a start of 10. And Amelia, who is my wonderful member of staff, has got a microphone. So who would like to kick us off with a thought, comment, feedback? I can try and answer questions, but we'll see how I go. Please, Alan.
Hi, I'm in Ketton. I just want to know what difference would it make to me? And I know it sounds quite naive and a bit simple, but generally, what will I notice? What will the difference be?
So the difference is, as per some of the things I set out, so for example, in terms of who your councillor is and how much of they represent, how much you can contact and how much they can help, but also things like bids, for example. You will know that I've fought the council very hard over, well, you may not know, I've been fighting the council quite hard over the last few weeks about bin collections, because they want to move that bin collection to every 3 weeks, not every 2 weeks. Now, so food waste can be collected every week, but for people with nappies or elderly loved ones who have hygiene needs, and that's a lot to put them through. It is much easier for us to fight as a small community to have your council listen and do what is right for you locally than imagine if I was fighting it in other councils. Same way how you discuss about transport. We've just got a load of extra electric buses for Rutland, right? Really good, we're getting this investment, more buses are coming. Do you really think that in a big donut unitary, they're going to send any more buses to Rutland? Well, Ketton's got a bus cut that we can talk about separately. The R5 is a discussion you and I can have afterwards. But essentially, do we really think, when you look at the whole Leicestershire, investment will go to Loughborough, it will go to the D2N2 corridor, and it will go to North West Leicestershire as an industrial base. We are not going to get our fair share. There is no reason to believe that if we go into one unitary, our council tax will go down. There is no requirement for them to equalise it across the whole of Leicestershire and Rutland. So yes, that would have to be something that I would try and make a red line, and I'd fight with the council to do that, although MPs have been cut out of this process as well, so I'll voice my voice. But in terms of what that means for us, every decision that is currently made for you is not going to be about what is best for Rutland, it's going to be what is best for the whole of Leicestershire and Rutland, including the Leicestershire people who live in Birmingham. Some of my Leicestershire MP colleagues, I love them, but when we sit down, they're talking about Nuneaton and Birmingham. If I came here and talked to you about Birmingham and Nuneaton, you thought I'd lose my mind. But essentially every decision will not be about Rutland and our small community and what's right for us. Also, adult social care. It's one of the main arguments why government says we need to change this, because they say small councils can't do adult social care. We are the #1 council in the entire country for adult social care. Do I think adult social care will get worse if we go into a giant donut called Leicestershire? Absolutely, without question. Leicestershire doesn't have things like animal nurses and dementia. We do. There are so many ways in which, and we all get frustrated with Rutland County Council, that's the job of the council. You get irritated with your council, you want to kick and scream sometimes. But they're here in Ripon, and they are making decisions about us for our area. Also, we got levelling up money. The whole country went mad when we got the levelling up money. They're like, Rutland, those poshos, they don't need no money. We've got massive social mobility problems in our community. I can tell you now, when we're shopping to a big mayoralty, the idea that we need support for our poorest in Rutland to build up and to get to where they need to, all the money's going to go to Leicester. Because unfortunately, the way the funding model was done is deprivation. So we will have less money coming to us, we will have less of a focus on us, less of a care for our issues, and a hell of a lot less to say. So I think actually, although hopefully most of you don't have to ring the council every week, if you did, good luck to you. You have to drive what an hour to get there, have an argument with them, see if you can get anywhere. The whole model, and it is difficult because we're not having to talk to them all the time. You go, hopefully my house has to go there, it'll be a bit easier. But, yeah. Please, sir.
I served as a councillor in 1972, so I've been to all this before.
Just different places.
And virtually everything you said tonight is a vision. The whole thing has gone full circle. I served with Beast and Stamford And the obvious thing, as far as we were concerned, the first step in reorganisation, was with Long-Eaton. Just as the obvious link with Eastwood was with us, because they were collaborators. But because the border between Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire fell between, we ended up with something that leaves us little memory. But since that time, I've lived in fairly large unitary authorities. And before I came back to this part of the country, I lived in Bradford Metropolitan District. I could walk half a mile and I'd been in North Yorkshire. I could walk a couple of miles, I'd been in Lancashire. But the centre was in Bradford. And not only that, but the centre for a lot of the county organisations, such as fire service, were on the border of Leeds. And one of my best memories was, as the chair of the village hall, I had to renew the entertainment licence. And part of that was to get the fire service to come and certify the building as safe. And after a time, I rang them and said, well, when are you going to come and do this? And they said, well, beamed, there was nobody there. So I said, well, there was nobody there because you didn't tell us we were coming. Well, we looked through the windows and it looked all right to us. And that was the level of support that we got. And I could quote you several others. And that's what you'll find. What you'll find is that peripherally, you will find it very difficult to get support from your local authority. Well, it's not local, is it? It's just the authority. Getting things approved and what have you will be extremely difficult. On the other hand, if you want to do something and not tell anybody, then I can promise you, you'll be amazed what you can get away with. So, you know, it's got some good sides and some not so good sides, but overall, there aren't many good sides.
I'm not sure encouraging MPs to try and get away with things. That's a great point. But your point about 1974, Lucy Stevens and Kylie Bentley, you know, with like the Rutland books, everything else like that, and I read them and I went, oh my God, these are the same arguments I'm making, and it made me question, have I missed something, have time moved on, and they really are the same. But please, next person. Please, madam. Media's going to get steps in tonight.
As this is all being driven by Angela Rayner, presumably she's based it on Andy Birmingham in Manchester, how accountable will these units be and how will they be measured on? I worry that they've become big and powerful and then we've got corruption and no means of checking what anybody's doing with the money or getting things being progressed. So is there a plan with it with Rayner that she's going to make people more accountable, that will give targets that we can see what the targets are, and we as residents of Rutland can see where people are in achieving the goals that are set, so we've got some basis of, not being an mushroom shed in the dark.
Yeah, another Leicestershire MP said to me, Rutland will be the mouse in a rowing boat with an elephant. I went, I've never heard that before. So just actually going back historically, so the Conservative Party was fully behind introduction of big mayoralties, but we said only where there is community consent, we weren't going to force local government reorganisation around it, and that's what we've done. So in some of the places where we have big mayoralties, so for example West Midlands, it was fully welcomed, it was backed, obviously there was some opposition, but the council backed it in the end, and we didn't require any local government reorganisation. And I think that's one of the big frustrations when I have the conversations with district leaders. They say to me, why can't they just do what you lot did, which is, yes, fine, bring a mayoralty, which happens to work very well, as I've said, in some areas it works. I've always been, because there were conversations about us having a mayoralty here under my government, and I said, well, I'm not happy or comfortable with that, but let's have a discussion, obviously, because we've got a bit of public. But district leaders saying to me, why can't they just follow that model, where fine, bring in a mayoralty, but don't mess around with the local government underneath them, let them do their jobs, and let those mayors just focus on such investment and really, really big issues people have some cross reaching. So in terms of accountability, obviously they're elected, and we would all get to elect them every 5 years or whatever the period of term was. Beyond that, we don't have any details at the moment, but I would assume that it's just the exact same as the other mayoralties. So essentially, local elections would happen, and that would be that. We will vote once every 5 years for our Leicestershire and Rutland ideally named council, and mayoralties, and that's it. And look, it is true, mayoralties are a step change away from, so MPs, obviously you hear everything we say and we do, because you're at the chamber, it's all recorded, and you know what we're up to. Mayoralties are obviously different because there isn't that same accountability. But at the same time, you know, in London, and it's the same in Tees Valley, and I presume it's the same in the other two, you do have the county council have the mayor come and give evidence, essentially like select committee hearings, where the mayor has to come and answer to the county council. Not answer to, but simply explain themselves. So I don't know at the moment what strategic authority, which is language that we always said we shouldn't use because we didn't want those powers given, what the exact mechanisms would be. But yes, there'd be elections, and I would assume they would do the same thing with the county council being able to hold them to account in some way. Although the county council don't really have powers over them, they can just verbally hold them to account. Although, as you've seen, select committees of government, you can do quite a lot with just holding them to account. But essentially, I don't know yet. And maybe we'll find out this letter this week, or maybe we'll have to wait a bit more, but I can't give you more than that. Here's it, and then we'll go to Rachel back.
Would I be right in assuming nationally these proposals are going to affect rural areas more than urban areas? And you mentioned part of the driver is to get housing built. Would I be right in assuming that there is a high likelihood of housing targets being pushed into rural areas which lack the infrastructure to support the development?
So on the first, I can say yes, and not least because some of the most urban areas in this country have already done this, so also there's a few of the left. But I think yes, without question. And the problem is, as soon as you say that you only want to have around 10 mayors for a country, you're also automatically focusing and forcing the focus on a city-centric-led model. In terms of housing, the minister's been very clear about housing. Rutland's already had our housing targets doubled, so good luck to us now, our 5-year land supply is gone, so we've got every property speculator in the world looking at Rutland going, isn't that beautiful and lovely? Wouldn't it be great to have another 75 houses here or there? But the same has happened to Stamford, the same has happened to Harborough, and what's really frustrating for those of you who haven't seen my Facebook, where I seem to bang on about this relentlessly, is that Lincoln, Nottingham, Peterborough and Leicester have all seen their housing targets reduced by the government, and we have seen ours doubled. Every rural area that I have looked at across the country has had theirs doubled and has theirs increased. Some have had worse than doubling, so I think we've had the worst, like third or fourth worst increase in Rutland. Some places like Cumbria, I mean, they're looking like 1,000% increase, it's absolutely mad. But the fact that they did that while reducing the official requirements of cities, to me is unforgivable. Not least when I know Leicester has got 1,000 empty properties at its current moment, let alone their brownfield sites, let alone the old factories that should all be being converted. And this is why I held a big public meeting in Harborough about 4 months ago, because Leicester City essentially has paid Harborough District Council a load of money to allow Leicester to build the housing that it already wasn't meeting in the harbour villages. And obviously that for me was a big issue. So yes, there is no question to me that this is about it. And that is also why Peter Salisbury has said that he needs Leicester to be bigger and to expand the borders of the city, because then you get more council tax, more business tax, but also multiple, you can build a whole ton more houses to meet your needs, and again, they bring up the revenue that's coming in. So house building is most certainly at this, and of course they want to build 1.5 million homes. Rachel back.
All right, that was actually my questions, but being more specific about St George's and Woolfox, are we going to have Angela Rayner just riding roughshod over public opinion and building there?
So the only, so I'm not an expert in planning, because as you all know I'm not going to do that, I must turn to Karen and make her answer this question. But the only way that there would become a decision made by Angela Rayner would be if there was some kind of calling in process by the government on it. I don't think that's likely to happen when we look at Karen and check that. No? Yeah, that's a good point. There's no plans currently to build in either of those places. But no, the only reason Angela Rayner would ever get involved is if something's called in. So a bit like the Chinese embassy in London, that should be, again, even though it's a foreign embassy, that's a decision of Tower Hamlets Council, we'll hold our opinions of Town Hamlets Council, but the government has chosen to call it in, and now it's Angela's decision. I think it's highly unlikely to see decisions like that called in. Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. The only way they get involved is a big problem. But the mayor, if we got to strategic authority level, yes, the mayor will be making decisions like that. The mayor will be the one saying, I've now designated this beautiful area of made-up village as a priority building spot. That's what they would do. They would have the ability to do that. Which is why when civil servants kept pushing us to do this, because Neil O'Brien, next door MP, he was a minister at MSOG, they kept pushing for us to give strategic authority powers to mayors, and we kept saying no, because we didn't think it was right for mayors to make decisions around where housing goes. It should be with county councils. Unfortunately now, the new government has decided they will give those strategic authority powers for housing to the new mayors. So that's a big concern. But again, that's what they have been saying. We haven't had it in writing. So I can cross my fingers and hope that's not going to be the case, but that is currently what we're being told. As I say, it's all changing day by day. Who's next? What do you want me to do? What are your worries? What do you not want? Please, sir. I worry I won't be able to answer all the questions.
Okay, so I might be one of the few voices in the room that's actually going to be in favour of it. So, I, having been ex-Rutland County Councillor and currently work for a national charity which with 67 different authorities, including combined authorities, I think we might be underestimating the benefits. So, if we turn back the clock, yes, when it was Rutland County Council, wasn't unitary, still had boroughs. The idea of this is you go to a single tier. So you can't compare what we achieve as a unitary authority and things like health and social care with what Leicestershire are, because they actually don't have a unitary authority, but they are a county council. So they don't have the same resources, so it is going to be different. You can't compare the two. You're actually pulling something together that does have the potential of delivering better service. The downside, I will agree, is housing. And that is the biggest downside to all of this, as far as control over that, and it's about local democracy. But I think we have to make some choices of, if we want better services, we might have to actually sacrifice some of our democratic sort of ability for the very local bit. And if younger people want the opportunity in the services, actually we might be better off all going together. So I think we'll be careful what we fight against.
The slight challenge for you with that is that going around the country, the amount of smaller unitaries, so for example, like us in social care, that we're not the best at children's services, for example, we're not the best at everything. But when you go around the country, when I spoke to colleagues about whom they have got smaller unitaries, quite a few of them are rated in the top 5 consistently. So this is my only challenge, but in terms of the argument that bigger always means better.
You're now talking about unitaries.
Yeah.
And that's my problem with the comparison you did. I have no problem with unitaries. And actually, if you have the right sized unitary, you will actually be really effective.
So which size would you rather have? Which one do you want?
I probably wouldn't go for the donut, I probably would strip down to slightly smaller. The donut would work as well. You want to fight against having Leicester City in it, for obvious reasons. You will end up there from a combined authority point of view, and you will end up with it being skewed towards that. But again, if you can get the unitary bit sorted first, you'll have a bigger say in any strategic authority. To get that bit right, you'll have a lot better actual ability to sculpt where policies go. It's then up to everybody in this room to elect the right people. 3 people saying the right thing can be more effective than 27 all over the place.
So just challenging that though, I feel like the 3 people in Parliament at the moment, because it's essentially 100 plus versus 400 then. And my voice is not being heard. That's what I said to you about if I try to push the amendment to say they have to put themselves over status. Realistically, if the Labour government says they're not backing me, it doesn't matter if I get every other MP, if I beg all my friends to vote for me.
That is democracy.
It is democracy.
And it's up to us to make sure you go there. Because it isn't just about, if it's Leicestershire, plenty of other rural areas, you actually get the right cluster together, you will get the right decisions. So it is actually about us as a community actually electing the right people. It's our problem to get that bit right. The structure, we can go down rabbit holes, and in actual fact, fighting to keep Rutland doing one of the worst things that we do.
Hello.
Evening.
I live in Bristol. I'm like the lady from Kent. What's it mean for me? My village got changed to me. Rutland will change to me. I love where I live. Our biggest thing is flooding. That's 1,200 of us within the village. I have absolutely no faith that Rutland County Council will ever sort that out. So I'm hopeful that a larger local authority will be able to do that for us. I've been in business for many years. There are economies of scale, as long as you make sure you get the right deal, and you have better buying power to be able to buy those. I would dispute that some of the decisions that are made here in Rutland are for Rutlanders, because we share facilities with St Stephen, Peterborough City Council, Leicestershire, that aren't yours for Rutland. I'll give you an example. You self-employed taxi driver, a couple of days a week. The licensing for those is being done by Peterborough City and Rutland. All the taxi firms have written to Rutland County Council to highlight the problem that they are going to impose at Peterborough City licensing on Rutland. Almost a black cat type thing. We're a rural community. Rutland is identity, but it's just one small thing. For me, I don't care who delivers the services. The car, the east or west, would be good for us because it is rural. They understand our problems. The bins will still get emptied. Elderly will still be looked after. Kids will be looked after. Education still will be delivered. Whoever does it, because that's statutory services. Like the gentleman over here. Just because government wants this to happen doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. As long as we get it right, it can be a good thing. I just want to see this sort of flooding. Thank you.
So on flooding, you and I can have a whole other separate conversation about that. But for example, I've got residents in other areas who are just as angry, who live in others and other places. The one thing I would say, when you said we'd still be Rutland, we wouldn't be though. That is the point. We would no longer have that ceremonial status. So you wouldn't drive into signs to say welcome to Rutland. Our flag would not be flown. You know, there is meaningful implications to that. Obviously, I'm saying if that happens, I will fight for that because it matters inherently to all of us. But that is a meaningful change to how we live our lives and how we identify and provide a place, which does matter. And I would want to see people go into Leicestershire County Council with a strong voice, not 3 or 6, because I've seen, unfortunately, what happens when you're a small voice. Next. Commissioner, please.
First of all, thank you for a very concise summary.
It wasn't very concise. Sorry.
I very well concise. I can't remember all of it, but I can remember a bit of it. Thank you very much. One of the points that you raised was the possibility, you thought, of a referendum. And you did an estimate of that and it cost £52,000. How likely is that to occur? Would that be discussed at the council meeting in early February as a possibility? Because it would be interesting to see cross-sectionally all the different opinions going on, and there's some very valid forwards and against, but it would be nice to know what the general populace thought of the whole idea. But lastly, would it count for anything? Would it count for anything?
Would it count for anything? Sorry, right, yes. So, in terms of that, and that's the thing, so I remember I was talking to my Leicestershire colleagues who say they want to hold a referendum. And I said to them, just so you're aware, I think the outcome will be that people want this, and we're talking about a certain issue, the the referendum. And I said, so the point of referendum is not so we can say 100%, because I know the outcome is going to be. I think we've all learned, don't assume what you think the outcome of referendums will be, because you're a better person than me. So in terms of when it would happen, that all depends on what we get in this letter this week. So if we get told we're pathway 2, we've got to have a proposal by March and then autumn's the next deadline, I would presume that we would want to try and do it between March and autumn. Now, Rutland County Council has the power to hold referendums. They've done it for other things. So I would be asking Rutland County Council to do it because I don't believe the government's going to do it. But who knows, they could come back to me because I put this written question in and say, you know what, we've decided to put some money in the pot. We're going to allow referendums to happen. This is where in the process we're going to do it, and we're going to do it. So in which case that would be fabulous, and we can crack on from there. But I do think there's something about referendums rather than public consultations. But also we have to have a very clear question. At the moment, we don't know what that question is. Is the question, do we want to join Leicestershire, yes or no? Is the question, do you want to keep your ceremonial status because you're joining Leicestershire anyway? So it's early days, but do I think it's really important we don't just end up in a place where at the very end it's a constitutional nailties, but nothing local government reorganisation? I feel quite passionate about that. But again, you may say, actually, you know what, you say the 50 grand and that might pay for something else to happen in Rutland. So yes, I assume we probably want it between March and autumn, but if we're not putting pathway 2, then we've got a lot more time to really work through this and make sure there's meaningful public consultation by Leicestershire County Council, Rutland County Council, and everyone else. So I can't give you exact, but those are the two kind of scenarios that I've been thinking.
Thank you. Again, thank you for your presentation. Do you think, in the end, that change is absolutely inevitable? And should we, although it was touched on several times, status quo, and knowing the notions of many people in Rutland who would like to keep Rutland as it is, do you think that's completely unrealistic? And it would be a shame, perhaps, to waste too much effort. Whilst we succeeded twice in the past to retain our county standard, do you think there is even the slightest chance that it is possible, or is it inevitable that we get change? In which case, should we be concentrating on what we want and trying to get the best we can, rather than trying to waste too much effort, albeit we look back in the past, how much we've succeeded, we've got county status back. Is it almost inevitable that we're going to lose it, in your view?
So this is the exact conversation I've been having with all the district council leaders and obviously also with the Rutland County Council. In this game, do we just need to keep our feet in all the different, what's the word I'm looking for, ports, all the different camps, thank you. Do we need to keep our feet in all the camps? Do we say, no, this is our position and we're going to go down fighting for it? Because Harbour District Council, for example, they said, no, this is our position, we'll go down fighting for it. And that's great, because I know what their steer is, and I know what my inbox very clearly. We did a petition about the city extension. We had almost 5,000 million thousands within 24 hours saying you will not put us in the city. So I've got a clear steer there for the two of them. In terms of resistance being futile, I imagine we've been told that every time. I imagine every single time Rutland's independence has been up and down, we've been told you've got no chance, don't give up. And reading the case for Rutland from '74, people were writing in the national newspapers of Kenya and Zimbabwe and New York and all these places about Rutland's independence. I had a phone call from the Telegraph yesterday. They've had at least, they said around 10, but minimum 5 letters every single day for the last 2 weeks from Rutlanders saying how angry they are about this and how much they want to fight it. So the question then is actually, and that's why I'm holding these public meetings, some of you will say, quite possibly, I want to join a unitary, but I want to keep with Leicestershire, but I want to keep my ceremonial status. And that, Alicia, is your job to go and fight for. Some of you will say you want to fight for us to protect our county council because we want to keep accountability level and everything else. That's what I'm trying to judge by holding these meetings. And some of you will say, no, just crack on, let's lose our independence and also let's lose our county as well, and let's just completely subsume into Leicestershire. Now that one I'm not really hearing, my inbox. But that's what I want to judge, because ultimately I think I'm the only person that hasn't really got a dog in this race, except for essentially my identity of who I am, where I live, because I'm not a councillor, so I'm not fighting to protect my job. If we stop being Rutland, I will still represent us, Leicestershire, East South, or whatever we become renamed as, but so it's something making difference to that job. So that's the question, what do you want me to fight for? Is it protecting our ceremonial status and our county council? Is it just protecting our ceremonial status and we join, and then which model do you want? That's what we need to rethink about as a community. And those are the questions that I've been trying to not come to a conclusion of. so that we can then come together as a community. I'll do one at the end. I think that's a good idea. Who would like to? Sorry, yes.
Sorry, thank you. From my personal point of view, my main concern is representation, and I think there's probably a lot of people feel the same. But with another hat on, I don't think we should underestimate what Rutland actually stands for and the ceremonial status of Rutland. The visitor economy is really important to Rutland. It brings in around £170 million to the county a year. We have 1.5 million visitors, and that's really important. Rutland is the smallest county in England. Our county motto, multum in parvo, much in little, really is what we are all about. And there are so many businesses within our county that really rely on that, and I fear if we lose the Rutland name and the ceremonial status, then that will affect the desirability of the area from a visitor economy point of view and tourism. So that's just my personal reflection on it. It's just a statement, right?
I'll make a slightly different comment. I should really. But someone wrote a paper this week, and I'm being really naughty because I do represent Leicestershire as well, and I love our harbour villages. But our motto is much little. Leicestershire's is always the same, and there is quite a difference. I would argue all those two mottos. But then I also love the Leicestershire flag, which took 1,000 years to get, but we got there in the end. But please go on.
Sinclair Rogers from Ketton. The history of reorganisation of local government is messy. In 1974, the Conservative government abolished county boroughs, which was a great loss to many cities and towns in the country. When the referendum was held for Rutland to be reinstated as a county, the villages in the east of the county did not have a vote because they had a PE postcode. And there is a view in the east of the county that Rutland stops 200 yards to the east of Oakham. Not all is well in the way that Rutland is run. I think it's wrong to place too much emphasis on the benefits that come from Rutland County Council. It is, in my view, too small and should no longer exist. It needs to be a much bigger authority with more professional staff that would not be employed on a part-time basis, often not even living in the county. So I think we need to be very careful how we actually see the way ahead. And I would not rely on us hoping that Rutland County Council in its present size could continue.
And Sinclair, which model would you rather go to? Is it giant donut? Is it east-west? Is it north-south?
East-west.
East-west.
I think otherwise we'd be linked with Loughborough, which doesn't really fit.
Yes, mine's just a very quick one, just following on from yours, and just a little bit of humour. In about 15 minutes, I'm about to get up and walk across the road to the Rutland Big Band rehearsal, and our great speech is, we're the biggest band in the smallest county, and I'll just leave you with that.
Thank you, I'm Martin. I would like you to put some emphasis on your first proposal. Rutland, what I was speaking to somebody at the back here, has already been said. We have discovered Rutland. Whenever I visit places, I say I come from Rutland, and there's always an interest. If I say I came from Leicester, they go, ugh. Honestly, Leicester doesn't have a good reputation. I don't know the answer. We have a county council which has its issues, no money, it seems to have most of its services subcontracted to other councils from Corby, Northamptonshire, everywhere. So something's got to be done, but I don't really know what the answer is, but I would like the protection of Rutland ceremonial.
I mean, the one thing I would say is, as the only MP in the country who represents 3 counties, and I might turn to Jack or Michael here, being from Harborough, tell me how popular Leicestershire, I know it's different, because it's also got 2 tiers, but tell me how popular Leicestershire County Council is in Leicestershire. Yeah, tell me how popular Lincolnshire County Council is in my South Stevenage constituency. I can tell you it's not. And that's the thing, that there are major difficulties with local councils. You know, our councils do incredible work and they're paid to what they do. But that point around ceremony is really helpful. Lucy, just to clarify, how many services do we actually subcontract? Because I get told quite often we subcontract over half. Is there
I think there needs to be a difference between shared services, which include co-design, such as our police, fire, health, subcontracted services, such as our ground maintenance, which is currently market holder, I'm now counting on my fingers, things we have our own contract with BIFA, and I'm looking at Carol now, of legal and environmental services.
So there are 2 services that we subcontract. So actually, if you think about what all that unitary does, that's not that many. But I just put that on record, because people post on my Facebook all the time, and they're like, what does RCC actually do? Because they subcontract everything. And I never know the exact answer, but now I do know the exact answer. Who would like to give that? Lisa, sorry.
Just one comment on the ceremonial. I believe that the Isle of Wight is also a ceremonial county and also well below the 300,000 limit, so they may be facing similar challenges. And we always ought to remember that at high tide they are sometimes called smaller than ourselves.
So I remember a few years ago I was asked to be the MP, if I was standing to be the MP of Isle of Wight, and my husband said to me, it's the one place in the country I'm not allowed to be the MP, because I'm not having you stuck on an island miles away. So I spoke to the Isle of Wight MP about this yesterday, because just like you, I was like, the Isle of Wight, I know there's a big conversation about essentially merging the whole of Hampshire, the Isle of Wight, and all sorts of other complicated places, I don't know that part of the world at all. But actually, no, the Isle of Wight will be allowed to keep its own unitary authority for the Isle of Wight. It would just come under a bigger strategic authority than the others. And so this is part of the problem, is that they think we're so small that we can be kind of dealt with, whereas the Isle of Wight also, because it's got its own island. I know during the pandemic quite a lot of people were actually asking me to build a wall, but we technically don't have a wall around us. So no, I think, frustratingly, that was one of my people I called going, you can help me with this fight, can't you? We can fight together. But the Isle of Wight has got no question they'll keep their ceremonial status no matter what, because they'll keep their unitary.
Hi. Just a quick word on Lord Lieutenancy. If we lose a Lord Lieutenant, we lose a major voice in the county. Full stop. So, I think if we could have a big efficient kind of area, that would probably work. You know, history says they just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're not as efficient. And the numbers don't stack up. If we go into a big unit with 3 points, we're always going to be outvoted.
And actually, we use the High Sheriff as well, because although it's a judicial, it's still the same concept. But yes, I had no idea that our entire identity was broken on having a lieutenant or not. But I think it is important, you know, people often are reluctant to have an MP come to something because I'm seen as inherently political, which obviously technically I am, that's why I voted for political neutral. It's really important to have someone like a Lord Lieutenant because it's that neutral civic role. But then if we're not Rutland, we don't need one, because we're just part of Leicestershire, so we have the Leicestershire Lord Lieutenant, of course, who I'm sure would come just as frequently to Rutland as they would come to anywhere else within the rest of Leicestershire. Who would like to come next? Please, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. You're the person put worse than me. Quite a few people have mentioned history. And I just think, if you look at Germany in the 1930s, this is exactly where they started. They started getting rid of the small boroughs. They started putting small and larger ones together. They eventually stopped having elections altogether. And maybe Herr Starmer knows what he's doing.
I think I will say that if references between his time and the 1930s Germany might not get us down the route we want to go down. But the point about local say and how important it is, the further people, as I said, all the academic research shows, the further a council gets away from the people it represents, the less representative it is. And it's interesting actually, because my husband said on the way here, if you asked everyone in the room to put their hand up and say who thinks we should have fewer MPs, you'd probably find almost every person in the room would put their hands up. But realistically, we've just had to do a boundary review because I was serving 110,000 people and my friend Chris Bryant, a Labour MP in Wales, was serving 65,000 people. It is what we don't want. But in my opinion, the worst thing you could do is have fewer MPs in bigger constituencies. Because you wouldn't see me doing my shopping in the co-op or wherever else it was. You wouldn't have me fighting issues like bins, which a lot of MPs actually refuse to fight issues like bins because they're like, as a local council, shall not get involved. The further we remove people from their local communities, when I go and speak to my fellow, I've got a text this morning from Spanish MP, all my fellow colleagues around Europe, parliamentarians, think my Twitter and my Facebook in particular is ridiculous. Because they're like, why do you go from tweeting about the fact that Rwanda's just invaded the Democratic Republic of Congo to tweeting about bins or having a surgery to my potholes? I shouldn't be talking about potholes because it's going to be my Greek. However, that's what happens when you move away. And my colleagues in Germany who serve 400,000 people, they never door knocked. They will never door knock. And that's really important in terms of hearing people. It does make a difference in terms of what your politicians, when they are then sent off to a unitary, fight for and what they focus on. Because if they represent massive communities, it's quite easy to not be held to account. Whereas I know when I walk around Rutland that you guys are going to stop me in the street and say, hey, 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 let's go on. I try and draw a line at the school gate because I like to just drop my kid off my own. But it does matter, that distance. And the more we distance politicians from the communities they serve, the more likelihood we have corruption, the more likelihood we have people who don't give a crap and leaders. Excuse my language, I'm so sorry. You can tell I've been home talking to myself for weeks. That for me is a genuine concern because you have worse democracy and worse outcomes for communities because you're not held accountable, because you're not as local, and you don't have to get involved with local issues as much. But all of us on Facebook say, yeah, great, fewer MPs, save some money, a lot of them are not worth the space they're written or whatever they're doing. Anyway, sorry, who's comes next? Please, sir.
Hello, you haven't mentioned much about devolution apart from Westminster. There is going to be quite a lot of devolution apart from the Secretary of State in terms of major issues that at the moment they can have a centralised say. I think devolution is the thing that I find attractive by the whole proposal.
So I think, as I said, most councils in this country would say they want devolution, without question. They would say, great, devolution, we're keen on more power and all those. There will still be, however, those big Westminster decisions, of course, when it comes to big planning things. So things like Manor Pass. I'm not sure that will be left to mayorities. I think it will come up, but we just don't know. But yes, devolution, there's a lot of reasons to think it will bring more money, it will work. The challenge is, we know devolution works in urban models. There's a lot of questions and challenges around how does it work when you've got really rural areas, and particularly ones where we get left because you've got vast swathes of an area that doesn't have a big industrial complex or something else going on. But that doesn't mean there aren't great opportunities. I do struggle when I look at devolution to go, when someone sat down with a map as a mayor of Leicester, Leicestershire, Rutland, if we're lucky enough that it's that small and not East Midlands, it's going to go, yeah, that stretch of rurality there, that Rutland kind of area, they don't need much, do they? They're going to focus on the big centres. Now, I might be completely wrong, and in 6 years' time, you and I can sit down and you'll be like, see, look, right, we've got all this money, we've got all this investment and everything else. But that's my challenge, is that I think devolution, there are opportunities, but as I've said, we see it work really well. Andy Street, Andy Vernon, they've nailed it, they've done a really, really good job. Teesside as well, amazing job. Reopened airports, doubled the amount of planes coming out of them. But in other areas, we have not seen any form of success. Now, of course, it's down to the mayor as well. Let's not pretend it's not down to the person they elect. But there are, when I see my district councils, they say to me, show me the data that proves it can work in a rural area. And they're the experts, they know more than I do about it. But it's a difficult one.
Yeah, please.
Does sound like your ideas and your mind is made up.
Well, my mind's made up. I've never been popular on narratives. I've always been open about that for years. I'm not concerned about them. But I haven't got my mind made up because I don't know if we'll end up with East Midlands narrative. I don't know if we'll end up with the Leicestershire and Rutland narrative. I don't know what the options are yet, but I know I'm very sceptical. Without question, I'll be quite open about that. I always have been. But we don't know what the offer is, and that's what the leader of district council said to me today. He said, how are you asking me to put forward a proposal, back a proposal, when you have shown me no evidence that coming together as one big donut is going to bring more money to us? That's their frustrations. They're saying, don't ask us to make decisions without data, which I think is a perfectly valid position for us to take. Please.
Thank you. I obviously, having a louder voice, more people, and keeping our Rutland identity are vitally important. It seems to me that on the bigger picture, we're going to, with 42,000, we're going to end up in a small cog in a much bigger thing anyway, whether we like it or not. And what I was thinking of is what is up for grabs and what isn't. And it just occurred to me that this mayoral thing, whatever it is, whether the structure for that has already been agreed, or whether there's potential for further devolvement within it of budgets and power, and just using the full mayoral thing for economies of scale. So whether we can still have devolved decision making to Rutland within a bigger organisation, but just make sure that we use the HR and all the other economies that come with a bigger organisation.
So some of your question goes to my point about mitigation. You know, what do we say? Okay, this is happening. What are the red lines? You know, what do we try and really push for? But the idea that some services still being delivered from Rutland or devolved to Rutland, at the moment that's not on the table. So that would be either an alternative proposal we put forward. I mean, I'm not saying there's quite a possibility that in a giant brownie donut unitary they say, sure, we're going to keep the in-touch office in Rutland. Good luck to them to cost that building in terms of having something that's just small there for us to drop by. But it's possible they could say, we want it to feel local to people, so we're going to have a few offices in different places, so people at least not have to travel all the way. That again is something we could try and push as mitigation. But in terms of devolved powers, no. At the moment, what's on the table is that we use them all together because they get part of the big unitary, and therefore we would gain from the benefits of being part of the big unitary, but then obviously you don't have any local devolved decision making.
It was just a question of whether that level of decision about what that model looks like has been made, and whether that is still influenceable.
We may find out on Thursday that it's a whole lot less influenceable than we think it is. But my view is that this is one whole. I mean, some people said, why are you holding this meeting so early in the process? And I said, because the process is moving at a speed. You know, we don't have time to wait around until March and go, oh, this is the final proposal that's gone to government, and therefore that's what we want to do. So I think we have to try and shape it as much as possible now. And the districts are up for that. You know, Rutland County Council are up for that. We're thinking, how can we be innovative? How can we push for things, whether it's council members or whether it's certain ways of, you know, red lines on our council tax has to be equalised across the whole of Leicestershire, you know, different things like that. Can there be certain services that are protected? How do we make sure, for example, that we put like a Barnet consequential formula kind of thing into funding where we say, you know, for when money is allocated across the whole of Leicestershire and Rutland, Rutland has to get its fair share so it's not milked for money. You know, those are things. It's difficult, but those are the kind of things that we need to work out, or those are the things we're going to push forward in red lines, or for example, ceremonial status. I'll come to both of you.
Thank you very much. I just would like to go back to the housing situation, which you mentioned before. With the housing quota gone up by 166% in Rutland. And you did mention that a number of houses are still unsold, which is obviously true. I mean, in Kenton, Uppingham and Oakham, some of the houses are still unsold after 2 or 3 years and have just been built and empty. I would like to say that having been in the property market, I do know that Rutland does have a problem with housing, particularly at the lower level, younger people wanting to live in the county. The infrastructure is not there for their transport, and they then find they have to drive considerable mileage for employment, and it's in a very rural area, and that costs them a great deal. If we're going to get a huge housing quota for Rutland, I'm just very concerned, and I think Rutland should be, that these houses are not going to be suitable for the younger people particularly to be able to afford and to be able to then travel long distances to big community centres, which is ever increasing costs, without public transport suitable.
So your point on affordable housing is absolutely right, and this is something that worries me a lot. And you can imagine I'm going to visit schools and someone says to me, my children are just about to turn 21, they can't come back to Rutland. It is a big issue. There's going to be a lot more housing. Affordability will be a requirement as part of that. There's other types of housing we don't have enough of. Karen and I had a meeting today about what we do for adults with severe disabilities. People want their children to be able to grow up locally, but even if they can't get them home anymore. There's a lot of things we need to deal with, but because we don't have 5 minutes of time, because there's so many proposals coming forward, I think we will see more affordable housing, but also we need it. And on the public transport side, obviously every house you build, you get still money, but it's also, we have to be honest, when you live in, so we have the highest car use of any county in the country, and that's because we have 50 villages. And the reality is that there are many buses that I've gone and sat on where nobody gets on or off apart from me. And that costs a lot of money to subsidise as a county council. Now, we've got £6.5 million to bring in to invest in our bus services from Rutland. Again, something that we'd never get for Rutland got it. It's not straightforward, it's really complex, but the point is well made that we need to make sure we create the best possible environment for young people to stay here and not leave the county. We looked to Rob, the man who always has a plan. Also, can I say that Rutland and Stamford had to rename the radio station? I mean, come on! I'm doing a lot of work to save their phone licence than anything else. Oh, there we go, Rob's standing firm. And then after this, I am aware that it's almost 7:30, so is there anyone else that's desperate wants to make a remark as well? I'll come to you all as well, and then I'll try and wrap this up with a quick straw poll, just to try and help me.
Thank you. Mine is just a quick point. There's been some very good comments today, and thank you for holding the meeting. I just wanted to make an observation on the process and the timescales. I have been asking people since I became aware of this issue over the last few days from the Facebook page, that almost nobody I've spoken to knows about any of these proposals and what is going on. And I think there's a real trust issue at the moment within the county. I think this feels like it's coming in through the back door because it wasn't in the manifesto. Also, listening to what you said tonight, it feels to me that this is happening whether we like it or not. And therefore, having a referendum feels like a democratic way of going about it. But given the timescales that we have, I wonder if the money is best saved and put into something that will benefit the county or whatever the avenues are going forward. Because two things, there isn't enough time to get information out there to inform people to make a proper decision in the referendum, therefore people tend to vote emotionally. And secondly, it feels as if it's going to be a waste of time anyway. And I think perhaps it would be, my feeling is better to get some information about what the possibilities are and what the potential outcomes are of a changed authority than fighting just to retain the existing authority when I feel that's gone. And secondly, I think the gentleman who made a very good point about local businesses and the importance of the identity of the county or the area. There are so many start-up businesses now, which I think is fantastic, which have Rutland in the name, great innovations coming on, and it would be a shame to lose those, and we need to do something to protect those unique identities within the county. Are there any other places we can look, for example, Huntingdonshire, where the county identity can be retained for the soft benefits, even if we can't retain the structures?
Oliver, there else, do you mind coming forward just as a mic don't stretch, and then I'll do a quick straw poll, and then we'll get back to what you think. Oh, that mic's gone too far. That's really
Thank you. I have a real interest in Rutland businesses. I've lived in the county nearly all my life, and I've now worked for the Rutland Chamber of Commerce, and that came through from Lincolnshire. One of the things I was very clear about when it was started was it had to be called the Rutland Chamber of Commerce, because we're passionate about Rutland, let's be honest. And one of the things I think that we can do as a community, is this is going to be done unto us, which I suspect it will be, is to actually knit Rutland together in a way that they can't break. And that's through our businesses, that's through our sports clubs, that's through our schools, it's through everything we do. You know, we've got 3,500 SMEs in Rutland, and there's some fantastic businesses doing some amazing things. If we can get behind them, we can all join together, we can make a real difference, because I don't think we've got a chance of being able to stop this from being done unto us, but Rutland needs to fight for its identity. One thing I did question is there an opportunity at some point in the future, when they're deciding on who's going to be mayor, that it's rotated round the 3 areas or whatever, so Rutland has a chance of having a mayor for 5 years? Just a thought.
Thank you. So I can actually come back to my friend, it was a really good challenge, because we don't want to do things just to make a point, but could it potentially be arm in our arguments about what needs to happen next? I don't know. And that's why I haven't said to council, you know, we must and you must at this point, because we just don't know where we are, so it's a really good challenge. Before we wrap up, first of all, can I say thank you to all of you for caring to come along. Local government reorganisation, I know it's not the sexiest of topics that you expect us to be really very we're talking about. Can we just do a really quick few straw polls? So how many of you, is it a red line that we should protect the ceremonial status? That doesn't mean the county council, but just Rutland as we are. When you drive and it says welcome to Rutland, even if we don't have a county council. Okay, I'm going to take it as almost unanimous. Almost, right. How many of you think we should push for status quo, no matter what? How many of you want to... How many of you who vote against that, just for interest, is because you think we haven't got a sharp fighting? That's interesting. Okay. How many of you would rather move into, if we get put into Leicestershire, to have two unitaries rather than just one big donut? Okay. How many would you rather just one big donut? I'm sorry, I have to keep calling it a donut. Nobody wants that. Okay, fine. And then, although interestingly my views were really challenged on this today by some of the data, who would prefer east-west division for the unitaries? Essentially, I'll tell you what the rest of the east and... Sorry, yeah, so essentially, we don't really know because districts are all fighting it out at the moment. Sure, I won't ask that question because I can't give you an exact division of how we do it east-west or north-south because... Yeah, no, well maybe that's one for a future meeting because we will... So essentially, if obviously it's up to you having come this evening, but my goal is to move through this process as long as I'm vaguely left in the house. I will do more of these so that we can get your views as the process keeps going. And by then, hopefully, by some point quite soon, we'll know a lot more information. But can I just say thank you to everyone. I really, really appreciate you coming along, for challenging some points I'm thinking about, for giving me a steer. I'm also doing another meeting next Monday, and then we will go from there. But thank you all ever so much. I really appreciate it.